Manipulation isn't always some big, dramatic thing. No yelling, no obvious threats. Most of the time, it's much sneakier. It's like this quiet thief of your energy, and it works through things we take for granted, like old habits, family traditions, and what society expects of us. So, have you ever had that feeling? You leave a conversation that should have been totally simple, but you just feel wiped out, completely exhausted. Well, if that sounds familiar, you might have just been playing a part in someone else's psychological game without even knowing it. So today, we're going to pull back the curtain on this whole thing. We're going to break down 5 really sneaky ways people can steal your sense of control, and we'll even look at what science has to say about it. Okay, so here's what's on the docket. We're going to talk about time as a weapon, the family time machine, this thing called the performance trap, the comparison festival, and the convenience store friend. Then, and this is the best part, we'll get into how you can take back your power. All right, let's dive right into our first tactic, time as a weapon. You know who I'm talking about, right? That one person, maybe a friend, maybe a coworker, who is always late. And I don't mean 5 minutes, I mean like 40 minutes late. Well, from a psychological standpoint, this is often way more than just someone being bad with schedules. Oh yeah, the classic leaving now text. We've all gotten that one. And let's be real, we all know what that actually means. It means they're probably just getting out of the shower, right? This is what you could call classic main character behavior. They sort of subconsciously get a kick out of the drama of it all, of making a grand entrance. And that's where the manipulation, the hidden power move, comes in. By forcing you to wait, they're sending a very clear, even if it's subconscious, message. My time is more important than your time. It's a sneaky way for them to pump up their own social value, and they're doing it at your expense. So this subtle game of status isn't just something that happens with friends. In fact, it can be even more intense when it comes to family. Think about it. Have you ever walked into a family gathering or met up with some really old friends and felt like, bam, you've just been zapped back in time? Well, there's actually a name for that. It's a psychological concept called family systems theory. And it basically says that these groups, your family, your old friend circle, they act like an emotional time machine. They have these pre-assigned roles for you. You know, you're the peacemaker or the rebel or the golden child. And it doesn't matter who you've become as an adult. The second you're back with them, you get sucked right back into playing that part. And that is where the manipulation kicks in. It's like your entire adult life, your accomplishments, your job, the fact that you're a parent yourself, it all just gets erased. Suddenly, you're being treated like you're 14 again. And what's wild is that this can actually make your brain regress. You start to lose that adult confidence, and you find yourself looking for approval from the very people who refuse to see who you are now. Okay, moving on to our next tactic. This one is all about something called emotional labor. It's when you're put in a situation, an environment, where you're basically forced to do all the emotional heavy lifting. And let me tell you, it is an absolute drain on your mental energy because you're the one managing everybody else's comfort. This whole performance has a name. It's called social masking. Think about it. It's when you have to laugh at jokes that are not funny at all just to keep the peace. Or you're the one who's always smoothing things over when it gets awkward. You're basically managing the emotional temperature of the entire room. It feels less like you're hanging out and more like you're running a nonstop PR campaign for yourself just to meet everyone's expectations. So, if you've ever left a meeting or a family dinner feeling like a totally wrung out lemon, even though you barely said a word, this is why. You weren't just sitting there, you were working. You were manipulated into shouldering the entire burden of everyone else's emotional comfort. All right, this next one is really sneaky because it disguises itself as genuine care or just, simple curiosity. But what's really happening is that the manipulator is kicking off their own little comparison festival. So you get a question like, so how's work going? But what you hear is, are you making as much money as your cousin yet? Or why are you still single? Translates to, wow, you're really falling behind everyone else. See what's happening? These questions aren't innocent at all. They're specifically designed to make you feel less than, to make you feel inadequate. And this is where the science gets absolutely fascinating. Research shows that the feeling of being less than, that social comparison sting, it activates the exact same parts of your brain as physical pain. So in a very real neurological sense, you are literally being hit with these questions. And why? Because it triggers shame, and shame makes you way more compliant and a lot easier to manage. Okay, our last tactic, and honestly, this one can be one of the most painful. It's when you're cast in the role of the reliable one. but it's not a compliment. You're not being treated like a friend. You're being treated like a 24/7 convenience store that never closes. You know the dynamic. You're the first person they call for every crisis, every drama, when they need money or a shoulder to cry on. But what happens the moment you need something? Poof, they're gone. They ghost you. And for a long time, our brains try to make excuses for this, to ignore the imbalance. But the truth is, you're not their friend in that moment. You're just convenient. And this really breaks down that imbalance, doesn't it? On your side of the ledger, you're giving everything: emotional support, time, money, crisis management. You're pouring from an empty cup. And what are they providing? Silence, excuses, disappearing acts. In their mind, they're running a simple cost-benefit analysis, and they figured out they can get everything from you without giving anything back. Okay, so we've spent all this time identifying these really toxic, draining patterns, but just spotting them isn't enough, right? So now we get to the most important part of all. How do you actually protect yourself? How do you take back your control? The very first step is to start thinking like a detective. You have to look at your relationships and just observe. Look for the patterns. Because when you notice that all the effort, all the energy, all the support is only flowing in one direction, that's not just a hunch, that's data. And it is powerful data that you absolutely cannot ignore. So here are 3 concrete things you can start doing. First, set boundaries. And listen, this doesn't mean you have to build giant walls around yourself. Think of it more like installing a gate. You decide who gets to come in, and you absolutely don't let in anyone who messes with your peace. Second, stop the performance. Stop masking. If someone doesn't value the real you, they don't deserve your energy. And third, protect your resources. Your time, your home, your feelings, these things are sacred. They're yours to protect. And I want to leave you with this one last really important thought. When you start doing this, when you start limiting access to people who drain you, you might get pushback. You might be called cold or selfish or a bad friend. But you need to know that you are none of those things. What you are is someone who is finally choosing yourself.